Hello and welcome to this online intelligence briefing focusing on the submarines of Russia's Northern Fleet. My name is Terry Patar and I'm a director in the Jane's Intelligence Unit, and I'll be moderating today's session. Presenting today will be one of our expert contributors, Tim Ripley, who has been a correspondent for Jane's Defence Weekly and Jane's Intelligence Review since 1989 and is an expert on Russian military capabilities. Just a brief note on the Jane's Intelligence Unit in case people haven't heard of it already. We are the team within Jane's that addresses specific questions from customers relating to current, emerging and future threats, as well as assessing military capabilities and advising on the kind of capabilities that might be required to mitigate future threats. Tim Ripley, as I mentioned, is a contributor to Jane's Defence Weekly and Jane's Intelligence Review and has been since 1989. He's an expert on the 21st century Russian military and is also the author of Operation Aleppo, Russia's War in Syria. Tim had extensive involvement in coverage of the Russian operations in Crimea and the Donbass in 2014, and he'll be guiding us through his current assessment of Russia's naval capability in this briefing. I'm just going to quickly introduce the presentation before I hand over to Tim. And the aim of the presentation and this briefing is to provide an overview of Russia's Northern Fleet submarine forces in early 2019. Within this, we're going to cover the chain of command, the military-industrial complex behind the Northern Fleet, submarine types in use with the Northern Fleet, details on the basing infrastructure as well as on submarine basing, which will employ a lot of imagery, which Tim will talk us through. We'll also cover submarine strengths and deployments and future procurement and capabilities. Now, I wanted to sort of just highlight this point that there's a real combination of multiple sources used in this presentation, which I think is a demonstration of the cutting edge of open source intelligence. We've managed to combine together information from imagery, including satellite imagery, social media posts, and other open source information to provide a really interesting insight into what is going on currently with Russia's submarines in the Northern Fleet. On that note, I'll hand over to Tim, and he'll talk us through the rest of the briefing.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just to sort of provide a bit more focus on how the sort of this briefing has been prepared, I've given a bit of an overview here of the techniques we've used, and just as an example, pulled out a few sort of images here, and I'll talk you through. And we've got on the left-hand side, we've got a video clip showing a Russian submarine being taken out of a shipyard on a cradle, a floating dock, which was taken from a video clip produced by the manufacturer of the submarines and posted on YouTube. We've got a satellite photograph at the top. Talked about open source. It's very clear that our Russian friends are very aware that people are watching them and are taking active measures to try and prevent people finding out what they're doing. They're camouflaging their submarines from overhead surveillance. They're building docks, hangars, so their submarines can be taken out of view, and they're warning their troops, their personnel, their sailors and their families not to put too much imagery and information up on social media. So it's a dynamic situation we're looking at. Now, where does the Russian submarine forces of the Northern Fleet fit into the modern Russian Navy? It's very much a part of what's called the Joint Strategic Command Northern Fleet, which covers what we know as the Kola Peninsula, but also has an area of responsibility that covers the Arctic zone, a great swathe of territory along the north coast of Russia going towards the Siberia and the Pacific, and then out into the North Atlantic. There's four main groupings of submarines, or divisions as they call them, in the Northern Fleet, and then there's a separate division which covers unconventional warfare, which is on a slightly different chain of command. The commanders of the Russian Northern Fleet, they're an interesting group of people, and you can see from the biography of the current commander of the Northern Fleet that he is an expert at bringing new submarines into service, and this is a big hint about where the Northern Fleet is going at the moment. It's on the cusp of taking delivery of several new nuclear-powered submarines, and successfully bringing them into service is a very high priority for the Russian Navy. And in Soviet times, it was, of course, was a state-owned part of the Russian Soviet industry ministry, but in Russian times, Russian Federation times, it's been privatized, commercialized, and now has pseudo-commercial structures and contractual arrangements with the Russian Navy Technical Department. And some of at least one of the companies is part private owned, So it's a more commercialized, or apparently commercialized structure. First of all, we have the ballistic missile submarines, SSBNs, to use the jargon phrase. The workhorse of the Northern Fleet and the Russian Navy is the Delta IV at the top. It's a Cold War design that most of the submarines were built in the late 1980s, and this is the workhorse that does the day-to-day deterrent patrols for the Russian Navy. That's the listings of the Delta IVs. You can see the ages of them, and they're all over 30 years old. Going into nuclear power attack submarines, up the top there you've got what NATO call the Akua, and that's the workhorse of the Russian Navy's attack submarines. And you can see that they have they're split between the Northern Fleet and Pacific Fleet, with the majority in the Northern Fleet. The new boy coming on the block is the Project 885, or the YASM, and first one's entered service. Again, another one is due to enter service very soon, and more of them are on order. And there's the details of the various classes with their dates and entry to service. Now, there are conventional powered submarines on the Northern Fleet. You have the first of the St. Petersburg, or the Lada class, which entered service last year. But the remaining submarines are what you call classic kilos. These are the early model 887 project submarines. They've not been upgraded, and they're unlike their sisters in the Black Sea that can fire caliber cruise missiles. These ones can't. They're strictly limited to torpedoes, and they are predominantly used defensively to protect the Kola Peninsula, rather than having a more wide-ranging role like the nuclear boats. Now, this is they're a growing interest. Call them unconventional warfare submarines. These are the boats of what's called the 29th Division of the Russian Navy, and they are used for unconventional warfare and are strongly suspected as being the submarines involved in the alleged interception or sabotage of transatlantic internet cables and internet traffic, and the planting of surveillance devices on internet across the North Atlantic. This is the basing footprint of the Northern Fleet. The red is the shipyards, and the white is the active submarine bases. Now we're going to the first one. This is the Lister Fjord area. 2 bases in use, and you can see from the various pictures of the types of submarines and the names of the submarines. These are from named photographs taken that can be sort of linked to specific dates taken by media visits or individuals of the Navy, and you can see that they match the places that we think are the active submarine bases. Now, just what does that mean for the Northern European scenario? I've templated on a possible firing box from the north of North Cape in the Barents Sea, and projected some ranges, and you can see that what would be the impact of these types of weapons in this scenario, and it potentially puts a whole range of targets: airfields, command posts, electricity grids, naval bases, bridges, political infrastructure, plus government buildings within potential range of the caliber missile, which seems to have a CEP of 10 meters, which is quite an accurate weapon.